Hola, SAP developers. Welcome to this session, part of the TOEFL 2023 integration track. Before we start, I just want to let you know to please drop us your questions in the chat window, as we will be monitoring it during the session. This session kicks off week 3 of the integration track, and it will be all about SAP Private Link service with Azure. Today, we have Martin from Microsoft, who is also an SAP champion, and my colleague Harut, and they will be sharing with us a great use case of SAP Private Link with Azure services. Without any further delay, hola, Martin, Harut, over to you guys.
Thank you, Antonio. My name is Martin Pankras. As you said, I work at Microsoft, and I'm like a product manager for SAP integration. So I work with SAP as our engineering partner, since we are both like mutual customers of each other platforms, and also with all the Microsoft product groups, wherever there's a SAP interface that's worth like pursuing. So I see the broad spectrum there, and I've been collaborating, working with Harut for like many years by now, and it's always fun to be here in sessions like this at the TOEFL. Happy to share. Over to you, Harut.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Antonio. Hi, everyone. My name is Harut. I'm a solution expert for business technology platform and working in a team of platform adoption advisory, where we are building reference architectures across business technology platform. And as Martin said, so we are collaborating for many years for now and different use cases and reference architectures, and happy to share one of these use cases today in this session.
Okay, so I will be sharing my screen and start from the PowerPoint. Like Antonio said, so it's about Private Link today, with Azure services, and we will be looking at the concrete implementation of a use case with the Azure OpenAI service. And like a quick recap,
sorry to interrupt, we don't see your screen yet.
You don't? Okay,
No.
so it says number 1 here. Zoom. There's another click to do.
Yeah, there we go. Now we see it.
Okay. So quick recap on what the SAP Private Link service is. It's an implementation flavor on top of the Azure Private Links, and enables you to have really a totally isolated connectivity communication-wise between your BTP service and the whatever your target on Azure is. And there's like a good list of past services on the Azure side that is released to it today. And we'll see a concrete implementation of the Azure OpenAI service of this setup. And bear in mind, there's like regulations that require you to prove that you have isolated traffic. And there's the benefit of speed and low latency, because you stay on the Microsoft backbone if both services run on Azure, the BTP part, as well as your native direct Azure deployments. Connectivity-wise, there's features that overlap with the SAP Cloud Connector. And I've written like a blog post that extensively compares what is beneficial where, and what is unique to the Cloud Connector that you won't have in a networking device as the Private Link, because it's like purpose-built for SAP specific features. All right. So now we'll be going into the Azure portal to create the Private Link, so that we see how that would go, how you would do that. And then we move into a concrete CAP example that Harut and I implemented for the Azure OpenAI service. Okay, so let me go into the portal. So over here, you see my Azure OpenAI service instance. And from here, from the JSON view, I can collect the resource ID to actually kick off the linking between both platforms. So in here, I've already navigated into the BTP platform cockpit, chosen the Private Link service, and I'm part of a Azure-based sub-account. That's why this runs then on Azure. I need to provide a name, and then in here, paste my resource ID And then depending on what type of service I integrate with, also the remaining aspects here. So I encourage you to have a look at the documentation that SAP has for this. Let me quickly open that up for you. Here you will find everything you need to finish the exercise. For instance, what sub-resource you need to put. And it's always good to have also a request message so they can identify from where the request came from. Hello from the Oktoberfest. The resource ID I'm collecting shortly from here.
So can you see it now?
Copy.
Yeah.
And then we can move over.
Yeah, if you just.
So this now creates the request to make the link on my Azure account. So once I go over here, there's the networking tab in Azure based on the PaaS service you're connecting with. In here, it will then ask you what you want to configure, if it's the network access from like on that perspective, or if you want to do it on endpoints. So in here, this is where we'll see up the private link request coming in once it's ready. So let's see what the state here over here is. So it says creation in progress for AIPLS. So I expect when I hit refresh here, yeah, there it is. And there you see hello from the Oktoberfest. This process can be automated. You can have auto approvals. There's various ways of doing it, but I will now click approve manually to allow this link actually. There we go. So now once this approves, then this goes to connection state approved. And then afterwards, you will see this orange button here where it says creation in progress, go to created. So let's see if we are fast enough, otherwise we'll move over already. So it says on Azure it's approved. So with the next refresh cycle here on BTP, we'll actually see this finishing as well. So I will be trying to refresh. Gets us a new state.
Yeah. Just Julia. You just said Julia. Yeah.
Now creation is still in progress. Okay. And then to finish the exercise, we need at least one application binding. That's all described on the developer tutorial, as well as on the docs or my blog series, which is shared at the end of our PowerPoint here as well. There we go. So I will add a binding now to an app. This is my general private link Java SDK app that I always use for all the samples. And this is the final step. With a Cloud Foundry app binding, you finish the linking process. And then this actually gives you the view credentials up here, where you get the hostname that you need for the private interactions from your BTP account. And that's already it. At this point, you have private connectivity to this service from BTP. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Or actually, Harut, you can take it from here, or you want me to share the PowerPoint and have the talk track?
I can take over, I would say, that we can maybe directly continue with the GitHub repository. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah.
All right. Now, since you have seen, Martin showed like how the connectivity worked, so how we established the connection between a BTP and Azure via private link. Now I want to introduce a small use case that we would like to share with you. And to do that, so we have also shared with you the GitHub repository, so I can directly maybe move to the GitHub repository. And we said, okay, so let's have a look one small use case which might be useful, and also we can showcase the private link connectivity with the Azure OpenAI service. And we came up with the idea of analyzing the audit logs of BTP, because as might have like the audit logs are sometimes very hard to read, so they are unstructured and not easy to identify the issue within the audit logs, and there are a bunch of them. So we said we want to simplify this task. So the large language models are, or we wanted at least to try if the large language models can help us to understand the audit logs more simpler, more human readable way, that that we can directly identify if there is any threat or issue within our system. Yeah, that's the idea or the use case. For that, what we said, so let's just take some samples from the audit log service, which is tracking or activated on the BTP side and tracking all the activities security related on the BTP. And on top of that, we created a small cloud application programming app running on a Cloud Foundry runtime. And we said, okay, we can use a little database, PostgreSQL, where we can persist all these logs for further analysis. And basically, the CAP application then is connected via private link, as you can see, to the Azure OpenAI service, where we can analyze the logs or get the summaries out of it. And additionally, I will show you also the future where we can, based on several logs, we can make a parallel processing using the LangChain, so that we can summarize all the logs and send it via mail, let's say, to the system administrator, that, for example, end of the day, he will get the summary of the logs, what happened in the system, and will have an idea what's going on in the system, right? So before having a look on the components here on the coding, I would say let's quickly have a look on the outcome, on the results, and then we will come back and see the code as well. So so this is the, as I said, so we have a simple CAP service, and we also created a very lightweight Fiori elements view on top. And this is also typical if you are familiar with audit logs. On BTP side, you will also have similar look, right? So you can see we have different time frames, different logs from different users, and also the message. As you can see, it's very hard to read. Okay, so in this case, the JSON is not prettified, right? But even if you prettify it, it's again still very hard to understand what is inside a log. And we said, okay, let's take this each individual log and then use the Azure large language model. I think we use the GPT 3.5 Turbo here. And then, as you can see, we got a summary on this particular item, that this is just info level security category. That was the ticket, just a ticket issued. Right? If I go back, so what we also did, we really wanted to simulate some threat on the system, that we can see also if that identified, and we get some summary. So for that, in Business Application Studio, we triggered like a malware simulation kind of way that also was captured by the audit log service. This is the original text of the log. And as you can see here, we have a great summary in a more human readable way that tells us in that particular instance, in a dev space of BTP, there was a malware identified, so that the administrator can take action from here on and go back, maybe if needed, to the detailed view of the log and then analyze it.
Let me quickly add there, Harut. This is like a standard way of testing like audit log capabilities and security stuff. There's like a signature that you can put in a text file that's described on the SAP docs as well. How to trigger this like malware detection, but it's only like a safe testing where we didn't actually put any malware on our dev space, but this is like the easiest way to trigger this. and it actually runs each time Harut clicks this item. So it's not pre-prepared or anything by us. So if you go back now, Harut, and go back in, we will see a different text.
Yeah.
So it's a live trigger to Azure OpenAI to actually generate something each time. So I see a small difference here. Then no user is specified. That wasn't there before.
Exactly. What else we did? So this is like we are doing custom every time for each item. This is, I mean, just for trial to see how is the result. But of course, like if you're working, you have a lot of logs and so on, to do it manually for each of them, it's also not that beneficial, right? That's why we said what we can do. I will show you later as well, so that we can use the lang chain and parallel processing of summarization with MapReduce approach, that we can take the logs, split it into the small chunks and process it parallelly. And for that, we said, okay, let's have something that we can create based on these logs, some summary of it via parallel processing, and then we can send it via mail to the administrator. So I will just trigger it right now. Okay, so the mail should be out now. Maybe Martin, if you can share your screen, we can see the mail summary from there.
Yes. Bringing it up. This time clicking twice on share.
Sharing.
Share.
And then you got the 000, and then you have to enter the time. Whenever
There you go.
And then, so when you start.
So that's the time, 10:16. Yeah, that
If you finish, you can
arrived just right now. And we see here the summary of we sent all the log entries that we had. And we see there are 4 audit log entries. 2 are about token issuing, and the third one, that's the like bad one about the malware. So you can take it here away from here, Harut again.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Share again back. And yeah, so as you have seen, so this was the outcome. Now let's have a look how we realized it, right? First of all, I would say let's have a look on the code of what we did. As I said, we build a small CAP service for that. So you can see that we have one simple entity which serves the logs. And then we also have an action defined that we can trigger the mail, basically. And if you look on the implementation here, so we used, as I said, 2 approaches, or we have even the third approach. That the first one is just simply sending this is, let me scroll too much. No, this is a trigger part, and yeah, this one, right? It's scrolling too much. So this is just the normal serving, and here every time we take an entry, we are using the Azure OpenAI SDK and send a prompt out of it to the LLM model, and we get the response, right? So this was the first initial trial what we had. And then after that, we said, okay, so we can do other approaches, which is actually very good documented in the following Azure OpenAI GitHub, right? So we said, okay, let's try also different approaches, because we have a large documents that we want to process it, not each of them sequentially, but in parallel. And so we basically splitted the result of the logs in a small chunks, and then made a summary each of them, and then basically summary of the summaries that we got by mail. And this is done by MapReduce approach of LangChain. And there is also another way to do it sequentially. So basically for each chunk, we are creating the summary and providing it to the next chunk as a prompt, and then doing the summary and so on. And then we get finally the results as well. So we have tried it as well. So it takes a bit longer time than the parallel processing, but the results are more or less the similar. I think with the map reduce, for this particular case, we got a better result. Now going back to the code, so you can see that we have these two triggers, two actions here defined, one with the refine model, one with the map reduce. And for the map reduce, so we are basically running it. Let's see. This is the refine. This is the map reduce. So the LangChain library actually provide us predefined functions that we can split the text into the chunks, and then we can summarize, get the documents out of it, right? And then call the chain and provide all these chunks to get the summary out of it. So this is really simplifying all the development. Otherwise, you need to do a lot manual if you don't use the LangChain libraries. Yeah. So basically, that's what we deployed also. And if we look on our BTP, so that you can see we have created the application here, is this one. And we have a couple of service bindings. Of course, the private link is part of it, right? So if I show here, you can see that the host name I'm using it, and just to show you that it's really resolving to the correct. So the connectivity is via private link. So we can do a short test. So I can just copy this host name. So this is basically used from our application to reach the large language model, right? We need the binding here to the private link service. We need this endpoint. And to prove you that is really via private network. So what I can do is we can just SSH to the container of our application, which we deployed on the BTP. And then from here, we can NS lookup to the endpoint, which we are using from that account, right? And you can see here that it resolved to a private IP address, so that all this communication between BTP and Azure OpenAI was via Azure Backbone Network.
That's the one that SAP like provisioned for you in their network, since BTP is the PaaS platform.
Something important also here is
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that was it what I wanted to show. You want to add anything, Martin?
Yes, all the perks and quirks in here are in the template and the prompt that you ask, so that you get a quality response from the GPT-3 model. And you see there in line 28 to 30, Harut prepared the in a programmatic way how we feed the context to the question. And that's where you need to tweak and also play around depending on your use case, what brings you the best results and the best precision. And I would recommend doing that from the Azure OpenAI Studio, where you can test how you want to provide it. And you also see there's the system message and the user message, where you can provide samples of how you would want the answer to look like, to give more insights to the GPT-3 model. Let me quickly share Harut then from the OpenAI Studio.
Yeah,
that we can see how it would look like there.
Yeah.
Share.
Yeah. You have to check on.
So this is the chat playground that you get with any Azure OpenAI Studio instance. It's called the Azure OpenAI Studio, and I navigated into the chat playground. And in here, I actually copied the system message from the code that you just saw from Harut's Visual Studio code. And then here, you can also add the so-called few shot samples, where you can tell what a user message you would supply and what you want the assistant to respond with. This can be used to further qualify your answers. But the way we coded it, it actually works already like this, where you can then provide your log message here, the JSON. So let me quickly get one from localhost. I can get it, I believe. It should still be running. There we go.
We can check together a few of these. So just that you have heard about it.
Otherwise, I will have Harut send me one. But there we go. So I'm going to copy the same JSON. And I'm going to paste it here. And then you can start tweaking what type of deployment you want to use. And there's more session parameters, how many tokens it uses. So you can start really playing with all the parameters and then move only the result into your code so that you can efficiently play around with this. And this also enables people who are not developers to do this so that you can efficiently collaborate there. And as you can see here, this is the type of response that you can get out of this then. And once you're happy, you can also go into view code and copy it for the type of implementation that you have. We were using Node.js, so you have all the samples there in the repository. So quick recap, what you saw today. We digested the BTP Audit Log. We're using the rather difficult to read JSON from there. Fed that through the private link into the OpenAI service instance to get a meaningful answer. And through LangChain, we also orchestrated this to work with really large audit logs. So you would imagine like reading multiple months of logs in there and then getting a meaningful summary pre-prepared for you and sent that via Outlook. All done through the integration that we have on BTP. You want to share the end there of the presentation and wrap up with the resource links?
Sure. Share my screen. All right, thank you, Martin. Let me go full screen mode. And yeah, we just, as I said, also collected some helpful resources for you. So if you want to get started with that, so we have a collection of Private Link and Azure OpenAI services documentations. And also, like Martin and I have a series of blog posts around Private Link service, where you can find very useful scenarios and you can try yourself as well. You can find also the sample repo here, what we just showed. Maybe if you have an instance of Azure OpenAI and BTP, so you can just clone the repo and try yourself as well. And we will be happy if you have any questions also to reach us, Martin and me. We'll be happy to support you there. And yeah, last but not least, also we recommend following sessions on the TechEd in general, that you participate at TechEd either on site in Bangalore or virtually, where we have a really interesting sessions this year, especially around large language models and generative AI. So I would say then stay tuned on this. And if you have any questions, we will be very happy to answer them now on the live chat, or you can always reach us as well. We'll be happy to support you.
Yeah, and I will actually be on site in Bangalore. So you can meet me there at the hands-on session that was linked there, the XP 160, where we do BTP, Terraform, provider with Azure, which also includes the SAP Private Link on Azure.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Martin and Harut, well, for sharing your knowledge and expertise as part of this session. I see that there are no questions in the chat, but I do have a question. So I'll take this time to ask the question. That was a very cool use case, by the way. So basically what we've seen is that we can use the Azure OpenAI service via SAP Private Link service, right? So and I will show us, for example, that terminal, how it's actually given like a private IP address, right? So that's very cool. I wasn't aware that such a thing was possible, but it makes sense, obviously. So out of curiosity, so which other Azure services are commonly used via SAP Private Link? So what is it that you see that customers are using the most, for example?
That's a good point. So let me quickly share from the SAP docs again. Then you can see the full list. So when you navigate to the SAP Private Link service docs and help.sap.com, you will see here consume Azure services in SAP BTP, and then the complete list. It starts with the load balancer. That's like a VM targeting service. This is usually about S4s or ECC systems or PIPOs, you name it, running directly on the customer's Azure network, where you want to connect them this way from BTP. Then our native databases, MySQL and MariaDB, and the Azure storage account. This is a quite popular scenario where Harut also published a reference story with our customer or joint customer, Friesland Campina, and where they connect CPI and the Azure storage account to move around some of their files. Then there's Azure Key Vault and Azure Cosmos DB. That's Microsoft's NoSQL globally available database for like high scaling demands. And the Azure App Service and Functions for further integration purposes or running apps directly. The Azure Application Gateway offers you the ability to have a web application firewall. And you can imagine the BTP app accessing a endpoint that the customer hosts on his Azure instance, but that's protected by the web application firewall. And this way you can also expose this to BTP in a private manner. And then we have an automation account solution that's like a workflow engine, and machine learning, where you can run your own instances of your machine learning models there and connect privately from BTP. And here you see the OpenAI service listed down here. And there's like a mix of specialized AI services on Azure that you can connect privately through those means. That's why you have multiple entries in here. They have different like sub-resources here. And then the last one is the Redis cache. But from here, so far, the natural evolution is very often starting from the storage account, where the customer first looks into from CPI.
And also the RISE ones, right, Martin? So because like on the RISE customers, I think are interested running their S4HANA workload on Azure. This is the first one from the list, right? And they are trying in their extensibility or integration scenarios with the S4HANA system, right? They are using the private link over that scenario as well. So
exactly, yeah, that's a good point. The all of this is covered from the RISE perspective as well. Yeah? You just need to reach out to your RISE team at SAP and have a quick conversation with them, and they can also deploy the private link for you the same way they would do for the Cloud Connector. Did that answer your question, Antonio?
That did answer my question very well. I see that they obviously like all the database services are available there, which is obviously great because in the end, yeah, it's easier to manage, to use and manage DB service than as a developer, right? Then actually hosting it yourself. So that makes a lot of sense. And in the end, if you have all the data in Azure, for example, then obviously you want to access that easily. There is one question in the chat, but let's see, it just says, which is the difference between consume and accessibility features in SAP Private Link service? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Me neither. I will have a quick look. Okay. I don't see the question yet on
Okay. Yeah, so it just says, which is the difference between consume and accessibility features in SAP Private Link service? Not entirely sure what Luis means by that.
Yeah. Maybe Lewis can elaborate a little on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Wait a second for that. But yeah, very cool. Seeing like there's actually quite a few services that you can obviously use there, and yeah, if you
and the
have
list
all
is
your
growing.
data.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
we continually work with SAP on this, and based on customer demand, like the like list shifts from time to time. Yeah, what comes next? But we still have a couple more lined up that once they reach the next stage, then we can also publicly talk about. Yeah, so the team is not done yet. Yeah.
What about cross-region availability? So, for example, if you have your Azure account with I don't know, BTP, and it's I don't know exactly where it is, but let's say Germany, it's available in Germany, right? And then we're talking about a customer that has a large presence, and they have a sub account, not a sub account, but a region in Azure, for example, in the US. Can I use Private Link in order to access that service? That, for example, that Azure service that might be in the US?
Yes, the BTP on Azure runs on 7 Azure regions. But the Private Link service is not limited to that. You can connect to any available Azure region wherever your workload runs.
Okay.
So cross-region completely covered.
Okay, perfect.
Very simplified. It will be like basically in the same way you do it in the same region. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know. All righty. Yeah, sorry.
One more thing to add, Antonio. Some of the services have like failover capabilities, and even that is covered by the Private Link. Yeah? So let's say you connect to Cosmos DB and you have it running in 3 regions. Yeah? And if the primary shifts, the Private Link will reflect that. Yeah? So even that's like the built-in feature of the Azure Private Link is like being leveraged by SAP Private Link service on BTP. Yeah? So even all of these nice features in the past that you would expect, completely covered. Yeah? Not only cross-region, like manual connectivity and configuration, it's all in there. Huh?
Okay, that is good to know. So, well, you know what? Thank you very much for running this session. It was very interesting, and we'll meet in Bangalore then. If you're going to Bangalore for TechEd. What about you, Harold? Will you be there as well?
No, unfortunately, this year, no. I will connect virtually.
That's fine. We will send you a virtual hi from there then. Cool.
Sure.
Yeah, so well, thank you very much. I also want to take this opportunity to thank you, the viewer, for joining the live event or the recording of this event. In the end, it's recorded, so whoever is not able to join live will be able to watch the recording after the event. And just a reminder that there is plenty for everyone to learn during DevToolFest. So make sure to check out all the sessions that are part of the event. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okie dokie.